Furnace. This is an engine building game for 2 to 4 players, and it is the kind of engine building game that I like the most, which is not very long. And I do not mean that as a negative or sarcastic. I will tell you in the conclusions what I mean. This is a game about investing. It's a Euro game in its purest form. It's about acquiring some resources to trade them for more resources to turn them into victory points. In this case, the victory points are money. That's it. At the end of the game, the player who made the most money, the wealthiest player, wins the game. The game lasts 4 rounds, and the idea is that there will be a number of cards that will be available for players to bid on and to acquire. The number will depend on the number of players. So, for example, this is how many cards we have for 3 players. Players will bid on those cards, they will acquire them, and they will place them in a personal area, and then they will activate them and use their effects. You repeat that for 4 turns, and at the end of the 4th turn, the player with the most money wins the game. This is the general script, so to speak. Now, more in detail, each player has a card representing their personal character. Each character has a unique ability, a unique power, and I have to say, I don't feel that they're all equally good. Some do seem to be a little more powerful than others, but if you find that to be a problem, just, use the characters that you feel are more balanced, or also don't use them at all. They're recommended in the general, the full game, but the beginner's game doesn't use them, and if you find them to be a problem, then use them anyways. So each player will usually start with a character representing themselves, and then you start with a card giving you your initial resources. They are the ones indicated here on top. So if this is my starting card, I get a coal and an iron in my personal supply. And also they indicate a number of actions that you can take. Then there will be other cards, again, that you acquire during the game, and they'll go in your personal area. And these cards have resources or effects indicated on top. This is what you get if you bid on a card, but you don't actually acquire it. And the person who does win the bid and acquires the card takes the card and will be able to use these effects, but they don't get this effect up here, which is called the compensation effect. These cards, the initial cards are single-sided. All the other cards are double-sided. When you acquire them, they have an effect, which is already colored, and then another one of which you only see the outline. And that is simply a reminder of what is on the other side, but that effect is not available yet. So you get the card with the basic side facing up, and later you can spend actions and resources to flip the card. And now this card also has more effects indicated there. There are 2 kinds of effects. One effect, when you simply see a bunch of resources, like in this case here, activating that effect simply gives you that resource. So when I activate that effect, I take an iron. That's it. Effects with a line simply means that you can trade the resource or resources on the left to acquire whatever is on the right of the arrow, and you can do that many times as the number indicated there. So here, for example, I could trade 1 coal for an iron up to 4 times with that effect. If it was this one, I could trade an iron for 2 coins up to 4 times when using that effect. Each player also has a set of 4 bidding tokens, just like so. And yes, they're in different sizes, and that matters. There's a really cool thing based on that, which I'll show you next. So, a turn starts with new cards becoming available, and then players will bid on those cards. The way it works, starting with the first player, who is the person with this rather impressive token here. That player will place one of their bidding tokens on a card, and they can place any of them. Rules of placement. You cannot place multiple tokens of your own on a card, so that would be an illegal placement. Also, there cannot be 2 tokens of the same value on a card, so that also will be an illegal token. Suppose that yellow does that, and black does that, and red does that. It's back to yellow, I think, and we do this, and then this. it'll be random because I don't remember the order, but just to give you a sense of some possible legal placements here. This would all be legal, I believe, and if not, that's fine. I said that there's something cool about the size of these tokens, because when you have multiple ones, you can stack them like this, which doesn't just make them look cool, but also has a practical effect. Why? Once all the bidding tokens have been placed on these cards, we start assigning these cards going from left to right, and this is extremely important in terms of timing, because if there are no tokens on a card, the card is discarded. That doesn't happen often. If there is only one token on a card, the owner of that token takes that card. If there are multiple tokens, the ones that do not win the card, remember, they get the compensation effect on top. So basically, when you have this like cute stack here, you go from the top, and now the red player, who's not going to win, gets their compensation effect. In this case, they can trade 1 iron for 1 oil. Then the other player gets a compensation effect, and the last player left there takes the card, places it in their personal area. They do not get the effect. It's super important. Players will forget that early on, but they get the card. And so this card goes to black, this card goes to yellow. Here, black and red get 1 iron, and then yellow gets that card. And that's how we assign all the cards. At that point, well, this phase, as you saw, was sequential, both in the bidding and resolving the cards. But then we get to the production phase, which is the second phase of the round, and this one is simultaneous. Players can act at the same time because there's no interaction here. And simply put, you look at your effects here and you resolve them, activating one card at a time, resolving the effects top to bottom. You do not have to resolve all of the effects, but super important, the rulebook says them multiple times, and it is key. When you start resolving a card top to bottom, if you start activating effects from another card, you cannot go back to that one. So I could not do this effect, then that one, then that one. And once you're done activating a card, simply put, you just turn it, turn it by 90 degrees or any other way for you to mark that you used it and cannot use it again, because after a while you have a bunch of cards and it may get confusing otherwise. So for example, here I collect a gear token. I can trade 2 coals for 2 coins up to twice, and also I can spend a gear token and a coal to upgrade a card, that is to flip another card. And again, the timing here is extremely important. Just like the timing was important up there when we were assigning cards, because I may be able to acquire resources here through compensation effect, trade them here through another compensation effect. Here again, the order in which you're going to activate your things is super important, because by upgrading that card, now I can collect oil there after I do that action. So that's the idea, and that you can activate your cards in any order you want, upgrade cards by spending gear tokens. And the general idea, again, when I said it's a pure, quintessential, incredibly quintessential Eurogame, in the sense that I collect coal and I turn it into iron, and I turn iron into money, or I collect iron, turn into oil, and turn oil into money. I collect iron and coal, or iron and oil, and turn those into more money. It's just that basic interpretation of Eurogaming principles. So, each turn we're gonna have an auction, and everybody will get something, because you will either get a card or you will get compensated. And sometimes you really don't want the card, you want to get compensated. Cards are assigned, cards are activated for their effects. Repeat the process for 4 turns, and at the end, the wealthiest player wins the game. Whee! When I said early on that I like my engine building game to be short, or in any case not too long, it wasn't a joke or a negative. It is just that you have some engine building games in which the last part of the game, the last half, the last third, there is a gap between the people that build a more effective engine and the ones that didn't. And it's very hard to catch up. Engine building games rarely have good catch-up mechanisms. And they shouldn't. They shouldn't have them, honest, because I spent all this time building this awesome engine, and then you just take it apart with some effects. That is also anticlimactic and very frustrating. If my philosophy about engine building games is that the person who builds the best engine should win, but there's no reason for everybody else to be sitting there for half an hour and witnessing the better engine leading to victory. Once the gap is wide enough, once the leader starts departing, that is when the game should end, because that is what will determine victory anyways. And so I want to compliment Furnace for achieving precisely that. Those 4 turns are just the perfect, for me, arc that I need for an engine building game to reward the person who built the better engine without bogging down the game with a long late game phase in which there's no real satisfaction, no real joy for the people that have been left behind. And I guess you may enjoy, I built my engine, so I'm gonna play for 10 turns in which I keep accumulating stuff, building more stuff, and widening the gap. But personally, even when I am in the leading position in engine building games, I don't enjoy it. I want the game to be over and start playing a game that brings me a challenge. Furnace does this very, very well. Because you have the first, I would say, it's almost like perfectly symmetrical. The first 2 turns, you are building an engine out of nowhere, and the last 2 turns, you're really, really getting to collect good stuff and cashing in and finally triggering some awesome effects. And I guess you really get a sense at the end of the game, yeah, if we kept playing this 10 more turns, probably would not change. And some results are pretty close, but you see that, again, some engines will just be objectively hard to catch up to. It will be hard for somebody who's behind to build such a good engine that they catch up and they even collect enough stuff to make up for the stuff they didn't collect early. So it solves the problem to me of engine building games, which is you got to find the balance between rewarding the engine, the best builder, without making the game last too long. So this is great. And within this framework, you still have some very interesting decisions, especially or also as it comes to the bidding system, which is excellent. Again, we don't like in modern gaming to just sit in there and do nothing, to take actions that give us absolutely nothing. We just discovered that it's less enjoyable. We want our gaming experience to be full of things coming in, of decisions to make, of resources to handle and manage. And you have this one here very well done, because you're going to get compensated if you bid on a card or you're going to get the card. And it's really nice, interesting touch there that sometimes you do not want to get a card. I just won 3 irons. I just won 6 coals. Or it's just about the compensation effect. I don't think I mentioned that. You get the compensation effect a number of times equal to the bid that you place there. So if the compensation effect is 1 iron and I place a 3 there and I do not win that card, I get 3 iron. If I place a 2 and I do not win it, I get 2 iron. But I place a 3 there because I really want 3 iron and I win the card, then I get an effect that maybe gives me something really cool to do with iron, if you have it. So there's an interesting cool thing because the compensation effects are good if you put high numbers there, but the higher the number there, the higher is the risk that you will actually win the card. And sometimes the design really to work well and it's just one good, simple idea to revolve around. It may be as simple as Splendor or Sushi Go. And here, to me, the idea is this bidding system that really holds things together well because it really creates some interesting decisions. Man, I'm going to put the 2 there because at least I'm likely to get 2 iron. I wish I could get 3 instead, but what if I win the card instead? And some of the times, of course, you want to win the cards. So you have a incredibly simple mechanics. If you know which one is higher between 4 and 3, you can play the game. If you know how to multiply 3 by 2, you can play the game. It's that simple. And yet it results into deep into fairly deep strategy and interesting decisions there in a game that plays so fast. Really, once players know what they're doing, you can play the game in 30 minutes easy, considering that the action phase, the production phase when you use your cards, can be played simultaneously. That also makes the game go very fast. So Furnace to me is a remarkable game because, again, it solves the paradox of engine building games, which so often I've seen in the past suffer from runaway leaders. You're not gonna have that problem. The leader is gonna win. Is gonna win in a span of time that doesn't feel too long. Yet there are some interesting and deep decisions to be made in a game that has such an incredibly lean core of rules. So I'm very impressed, very pleased with Furnace. It is an excellent, simple, yet engaging engine building game.